All right, perfect. Well, Travis, just kind of starting with your background, where you went to high school, into minor league ball, and then kind of where you're at with elite right now.
So originally from Wisconsin, so I went to a small high school up in central northern Wisconsin. Went to JUCO after high school. Um, After JUCO, there I transferred into North Central College, which is a Division III in Naperville.
Hmm.
After that, I actually started playing immediately. Like literally, I think I signed the day after my senior year of baseball kind of ended. I signed with the Cook County Cheetahs, which is now the Windy City Thunderbolts.
Okay.
Played with them for probably a month. After a month, I got released. About a year later, year give or take, half a year later, signing with the Gary Railcats. That's when I started. Also, at that same time, started working for the Chicago White Sox training academies. Played for the Railcats from 2004 to 2008.
Hmm.
Stopped playing for the Railcats to start running a White Sox training facility, to oversee it, to be their everyday guy. What did we do that? 5 years, 6 years, something like that. And then Justin had just started elite baseball. I had broke off because he was working for the White Sox as well. He broke off, started elite baseball. About a month or so in from that, he asked me to come and leave the White Sox and join him with elite.
Hmm.
So I did that, and I've been elite now for, I believe it's 11 or 12 years. With elite, I started out as kind of the lead hitting instructor, lead pitching instructor. And then from there moved on to director of player development. And then I also do some consulting for the Cubs.
Talking more primarily on the pitching side of things, what are some of kind of the biggest things that you see guys struggle with on the mound, whether it's kind of the youth guy who's just starting or even up into your higher end athletes in high school?
Um, Honestly, like the biggest things become strength, stability, body control, mobility, stability. There's, with this age group now is like posture in kids today is worse than it's been. Um, just a lot of thoracic issues, a lot of scapular issues, which leads to problems through the shoulder and everything else like that. So there's lots of thoracic limitations in these kids because the spine is so curved and it's like they have to fight to go back into a normal position.
Hmm.
And again, that's leading to scapular issues. It's leading to shoulder issues. Um, and everybody wants to come in when they pitch and they just want to be like, hey, how do I gain velocity? And I'm like, well, I mean, if you start throwing hard, you're starting to throw really hard with intent right now with the way that your body is. Like, let's be real, like you're at a higher risk for fatigue.
Hmm.
You're at a higher risk for putting your joints into a position that your muscles and ligaments aren't going to be able to support. So, and it's hard to get that across to them because I think a lot of times when people come in for lessons, it's just like, when can we get on the mound? Like, aren't
Yeah.
we supposed to be on? Aren't we supposed to be on a mound? Like, how am I going to get better at pitching if I'm not on a mound? And I'm like, you gotta work on getting your body right. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing is just getting them to understand they have to become better movers. They have to learn how to own their body, control their body to be good at doing something that requires so much physicality.
Yeah, the controlling your body down the mound. And you always talk about controlling your core. And as you're moving down the mound, you need to be able to control it and not just flying into these positions, but being able to get into them and control them. So how do you kind of talk to kids about making that mind frame switch to just, I want to throw it as hard as physically possible and really get them to understand, well, one, two, and three have to happen for you to be able to do that.
And I use a lot of analogies because I feel like the majority of people that I deal with understand analogies better than they understand, me trying to explain something technically.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's the same thing. Like I'll have people stand somewhere and I'm like, okay, listen, like I want you to stand on one foot and start to lean backwards. And as they start to lean backwards, I'm like, what do you feel what muscle group is working the most?
Hmm.
And they'll be like, I feel like my stomach is really having to work to like support my body weight. I'm like, okay, so when you're a little bit off balance, you have to use more muscle to survive that position.
Hmm.
And I'm like, for us to move fast, though, unfortunately, we have to be able to keep muscles relaxed. So going down the mound, or even if it was an infield or thrown across the surface of the infield, it's about being able to move in a position where you can move quickly, relax until you need to be tense. Like the muscles have to work for us to move in the first place, but we're trying to minimize what they need to do until they're required to actually have that impulse. If you put yourself in a bad position, it's exceedingly hard to do. So sometimes guys go down the mound and I'll just like, they're not going to throw a pitch, but I'm like, hey, just like try to start working your way down the mound and swing your arm up, your natural timing of when you swing your arm up, and just try to feel natural. And they'll move, and I'll just grab their hips and I'll move their hips a little bit, not even a lot. And I'm like, were you able to get your arm to do exactly what you want? Or did you have to work a little bit more to get your arm to actually even just swing up? And they're like, well, I had to work a little bit more. It wasn't as natural because I was compensating to try to like get back into balance. And I'm like, I'm only moving you a little bit off balance. I said, so there's a ton of things that can get you off balance going down the mound. There's tons of things. And sometimes it is like just stability, like general stability. Sometimes it is strength. Sometimes it is just going into a bad position because going that bad position, they feel like they've got more range of motion. And because they have more range of motion, it feels like you have more time to get to a fast speed. And then they end up having obviously the muscle out of that too. So it takes a lot of explaining, and everybody's different.
So, what would you kind of say to somebody who is obviously trying to see their velo jump, but isn't necessarily seeing it jump or any reductions in their arm pain? What would you kind of say to that kid?
Again, it depends on the situation. So for some kids, like there's guys that need to go into still a movement window. It's like, listen, like as you can have better mobility or even better control of your range of motion, and whether that be you got to get stronger in a longer range of motion, whether that's whatever ends up having to be, or even stability. So like those guys, like if you want velocity, like this has to come first. Like you have to get into those windows. If you don't have a ton of mobility, because I get some athletes that are more hypermobile and smaller. I'm like, listen, like you can have less body weight. Yeah, you can have a little less body weight and a little less length and have this bigger mobility and still have more potential for speed. But most kids again fall into like average range of motion. And I'm like, well, if you have average range of motion and you have average height, like you're gonna either have to have like body mass or you're gonna have to move really fast.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends. Like some guys are in those windows of like, hey, you're a mobility guy. Get your mobility right. Some guys you're a stability guy. Hey, you're a posture guy. You got to get this right. We'll work on getting all these, your flow and stuff like that. But like this stuff's got to be on your list. And if you want the velocity to go up, here's where it starts.
Mm-hmm.
So it really depends on where guys are at, and I think there's still a lot of guys that want like an immediate jump. Like I want to gain 3 miles an hour in a week. And I'm like, yo, man, if it was that easy, if it was that easy, you'd be throwing 100 before you leave high school.
Yeah.
Like it's not that easy. Like it takes a little bit of time, and some jumps are going to come a little bit quicker, and sometimes there's going to be months without a noticeable jump where it might climb up like a couple tenths of a mile an hour, and you might even during that time, obviously your speed's going to plateau and sink and come back up, and it's going to be wavy. So it's like every day, it's not going to be the same. And then, kids velo will go down a mile an hour, and they're like, "What am I doing wrong?" And I'm like, "You're not doing anything wrong, man." Like, So when it comes to velocity, it really depends on what bucket guys are in, and then essentially like trying to monitor them and teach them that things take time to be patient. And again, like these kids, like I'm gonna go back to posture a bunch because like like your guys' posture is so bad. Like you're like I don't want them coming back in and be like, hey man, like I'm hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I have to sit out. Like I've got some forearm soreness or my shoulder or my lat or whatever it ends up being. Like it doesn't make me feel good to see that happen to them. You know what I mean? So it's like, and obviously it doesn't make anybody feel good, but like this is my job. So I feel like I'm responsible for
Partially
a big part.
responsible for that injury.
I am. It feels like that, even though I can only have them again. I have them that typically like 1 day a week for 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I can't be there with them every day, every week to make sure that they're on and doing all the things they need to be doing. you know, so, but I still feel responsible, which is why I'm like, let me try to arm them with as many things as I can. So if they really want to work through stuff, they can work through it. And I recommend a lot of them to, you know, go see yourself. I recommend them, like, listen, like you go see, you're gonna have to see, you're gonna have to see some of these guys, like go do that, because I'd rather have you do that. And it's great because the guys that do, like, typically come in, you know, 30 minutes, 35 minutes early before their lesson, and I'll see them going through their entire like movement plan that's
Mhm.
been set forward for them, you know, and I'm like, great, like you get it. And those guys, they tend to have, they tend to make those moves quicker, clearly. Like it's just they put in the time, they do the boring things, and they tend to have, you know, more success, and it tends to come a little quicker, you know. And the guys that get stuck, it's usually because they're trying to skip something.
Mhm.
They're, you know, trying to skip the, hey, I got to learning how to be in a better position, or, you know, they're trying to, like, why can't I throw hard, and they still stand around like this, and I'm like, you can't even, like, you have to use so much muscle just to get your
Just
shoulder
stand
blade to
up.
move, that
Yeah.
you can't stay fluid. And then you're jerking so hard to try to get those muscles to work that you're off balance. And then your core is having to work to stabilize, to get, you know, the muscles in and around your shoulder blade to move your shoulder blade. And like, and so it's like, let me explain it to you again. Here's what we need to get done. Like, here's the route. Like, you either want it or you don't. We had another guy that we used to do velocity class with, and at one time I brought up this thing about like magic pixie dust. I'm like, I don't have any magic pixie dust that I can just take and sprinkle over you, and like, here's 3 miles an hour for you, and there's 3 miles for you. Like, if that was the case, I'd have like my own island, and I probably wouldn't be teaching baseball anymore.
Mhm.
No, I would still teach baseball because I love baseball. But, you know, and then like he actually brought me a thing of glitter.
The sprinkle.
He put a little thing on it that said Travis's magic pixie dust,
Oh, that's
or,
hilarious.
or Travis's magic velocity dust, or I can't remember what it said. But I was like, I'm telling these guys, I'm like, listen, it's a process, and you have to be okay with it. Might take you a year. Now, hopefully, it happens for you sooner than that. But don't be like, hey, I need to get this something done in a month. Yes, we have short term goals, but you got to be okay with, like, if the process takes you 3 months, don't be upset. Stay in the process and just keep in the process.